Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7 out today. Got some more RTA clips for you guys. Now the first one we're going to take a look at is this match over here against an Emperor player that I actually matched into. Wasn't recording at the time, I just kind of did it for fun, but you see it happened about a minute ago. It was a pretty nice game because I kind of changed up my playstyle, knowing that with Emperor players, it's do or die. You have to take the initiative or you're going to get run over. So against this guy right here from the European server, I had first pick and I just picked DJB. It's not what I've been doing normally, and I haven't done that for about maybe almost a year now, I'd say. But slam DJB first pick. He's good against a lot of openers like Lua, C. Lilius, any fast speedy debuffers, and he's also pretty decent against some standard units like, for example, LR Crow, and any other units that provide barriers like ROL. So my opponent ends up picking LR Crow and Spectre Tenebria, which I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna need some form of AoE to deal with this, and my opponent's probably gonna be playing standard. So knowing that, my DJB is pretty fast, and so I chose two other pretty fast units. I chose Landy, who's 250 something speed, and I chose my A-Raz, which is around 240 something speed. I was gonna play a very aggressive, fast-paced tempo team, and there's no way my opponent would know the speeds of my units, because most Landys nowadays are pretty slow and a bit more tanky, not on Guiding Light and on Bloodstone or Counter. And A-Raz's, most of them are sitting around 200, 210 speed, although mine's an exception. My opponent ended up going with Politis, and I thought it was going to be a DPS Politis, ended up being a D-Gen one, and then went for the Lionheart Sirmia. So I was feeling pretty good here, but I needed my opponent to force ban something. So I picked Straze, and then I last picked Roy. I thought Straze would be great. He's probably going to ban this. His first 4 units are pretty slow, so there's no way he's going to let this through. He last picks the Elena, which I had to go ahead and ban, because otherwise it would completely defeat the purpose of my Landy. It'll heal, and he gets to push up, and he gets to have the invincibility. So Landy actually goes before my DJB, a little bit of speed RNG there, but it works out in my favor. She actually procs LR Crow's barriers, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go for this. Let's go for the S2, let's barrier invert for damage. And it turns out the Politis here was not a DPS one, so I did appreciate that. DJB was going to put up the immunity, we're going to push up the team. Even if Politis goes here at this point, we would have been fine, because we had immunity and she would not be able to defeat my Roy. So A-Raz goes, we actually dual attack into the Lionheart on purpose here. This is to make sure that we get her low enough for Roy, who's going to pop a Soul Burn. We Soul Burn to the Lionheart, we're going to try to take her out. Unfortunately, no attack buff from the Roy. He does get one before he pops his S3, so Spectre does not stand a chance. And yeah, we're able to wipe out basically everybody. Now, we're still in a danger zone here because LR Crow, Politis, and Lionheart are going to be taking the turn. So Politis, you can see her about 15k HP, very tanky build, and probably on a lot of effectiveness and effect res too. So she goes and stuns my Roy yet again. LR Crow's coming in. I was a little worried because of the AoE damage, because it won't proc A-Raz's barrier for the backline, but fortunately, Landy goes ahead and cuts because she has that speed buff going on, and we slam that S3. We're going to take out the LR Crow and the Lionheart Sirmia, and now we're just left with a Politis. So yeah, that is gonna be it for this little clip here. Roy doing a really solid job there, and softening up everyone for Landy to finish things off. Alright, so moving on to some other matches. Just played a bunch of matches, went on a pretty big losing streak, but this comeback was pretty nice. So I'm going to show you guys all 3 of the replays that were the most recent matches, And yeah, so my opponent got a first pick here and went for the Lua. I decided to counterpick with DJB and Arwell. Not really sure what my opponent was going to do, whether they're going to use Lua as like a bait and then like pivot later in the draft to a more standard draft, or if they were going to go for a more aggressive type of cleave. Now, my opponent did actually pivot, went the Ilanov and Maid route. So seeing Ilanov and Maid together, I thought, well, Lua, Ilanov, and Maid are not good against Shu. Shu can just obliterate all of them. And Lua, if she resets Shu's S3 at the beginning of the fight, it just means that Shu can counter without even taking a turn, which is a nice little interaction. My opponent decided to counterpick my Shu twice with Landy and Celine. That was their biggest mistake because, of course, we know that Shu just obliterates Earth units. Come on, guys, haven't you played Guild Wars? But we got Pirate Captain Flan and Flitica as my picks in response to try to put up that skill null so we aren't screwed over by the opponent. So, Flitica gets to go, and we get to S2 at the beginning. She is on Guiding Light, so she's going to be pretty safe in the back here. Now, I had the choice of resetting Ilanov or the Maid, and I chose to go for the Maid just to check the resistance. My Flitica has a decent chunk of effectiveness, so I thought might as well. Maid resisted, but that is perfectly fine, and I really didn't care whether Celine, actually, yeah, it wasn't the Ilanov that would have reset, it would have been either the Celine or the Maid, and I didn't really care if the Celine had her S3, because I'm sure she can't burst through Shu with just that alone. If she did, if she was capable of doing that, then we see her everywhere in Guild Wars, but we don't. So yeah, Shu's gonna take the turn, actually gets pushed up there because of my Snow Crystal, I believe it procs. So we get the anti-crit buff up for the entire team. Celine gets to go, and she chooses not to go for the Shu. I mean, with anti-crit and the ice crystals, then, you know, it's not really going to work all too well. Shu did counter, but Shu can't ever hit the Celine because she's on evasion. And did I say ice crystals earlier? I meant the snowflake for warriors. Shu ended up countering the Maid. She ends up countering the Ilanov too. The unfortunate thing is, while she does get these counters, she doesn't get any fooshes. It does push up her combat readiness though, so not complaining. Gonna end up manually doing a foosh into the Maid, which does a lot of damage and actually finishes her off, which means no reviving shenanigans or attack buffs for the team. Ilanov goes into the Arwell, and this is where Shu is just absolutely popping off. You saw all those games that I lost earlier? Yeah, Smilegate took pity on me, and this was essentially my pity match. I think it was at this point, after the Shu countered the Ilanov again, I believe my opponent had disconnected here, so you're just going to see the timer kind of run out, and the AI take over for a couple of turns. But I believe it was after this that, yeah, we got the win. So, hey, if it's a pity match, I'll take it. Take what I can get. Next up on the list, we're going up against Punch. So this match, I actually got the first pick, and I just went for a Crimson Armin. I went for that because the Arwell was pre-banned, so I thought, hey, second best knight for me right now to play super defensively and for a ton of mitigation, so let's do it. I end up facing a C. Lilius and Zeo pick, so I'm really concerned that this is going to turn into some sort of cleave. So, in return, I go ahead and pick the DJB, who's pretty good into C. Lilius. Mine's on Eternus, so I can cut. And I picked the Sage Ball, because with Zeo and C. Lilius, only one of them can take the turn before Sage Ball will cut and interrupt the flow of their team. So I knew that Sage Ball was probably going to be the force ban, and he really had nothing to counter pick the Sage Ball. There's not many units out there that can deal with him, unless you have like a Soulburned Ron with like a Politis, right? You have to have Stigma, and Politis is passive, but In this case, my opponent goes for a Tomoka and then switches things up and goes for Bellion. Well, seeing Lilia, Zio, Tomoka, and Bellion, I'm assuming that I'm fighting the first 4, so I go ahead and pick the Rylet. Rylet's pretty good here. If Tomoka misses the Rylet, we are in really good shape, plus all the damage mitigation from Crimson Armin, whose passive actually mitigates all forms of damage, not just crits like Adamant Shield does. So she works really well in that regard with evasion units, so that was a good pairing there. Bellion would also continuously give Rylet stacks because she can't help but AoE. And then I end up panic picking, not really panic picking, but I kind of couldn't think of anything to go into this. I was gonna pick Spectre Tenebria, but because the Bellion was picked, that was not a great option. So I needed someone bulky, but also needed someone who can kind of punish this sort of team. So I went for the Archdemon. And Archdemon turned out to be a fantastic choice. My opponent ended up with the Landy, and let's go ahead and see what happens. I let the Landy through, and I banned the Tomoka because I didn't want that nuke coming in, and I thought Landy would have some AoEs. Perhaps it will help Rylet with some of the stacks on his focus bar. So my Crimson Armin is giving barrier to the entire team. If you're wondering why that is, she is on a protection set. So Rylet actually getting that little bit of extra health matters quite a bit. It can mean the difference between living and dying. So Lilius goes for the S3. Rylet, I believe 15% here. So, you know, Smallgate taking pity on me and not stripping the Rylet, which is fantastic. He ends up going for the Provoke on him though, which I didn't really mind. I'm gonna go ahead and barrier invert that Lilius's barrier that was put on Bellion. And then I'm going to push up my entire team because watch, Crimson Armin is going to take the turn right before Landy, and Landy's going to lap. So this ensures that my Crimson Armin protects everybody and nobody actually cycles out of their invincibility. Now, ideally here, if Landy went for the S1, at least Archdemon would lose her barrier, but this guy decides to go for the S3, probably pushing up the Lilius and the Zio in the back lines. And with the blind from DJB's S2, Zio and Landy can't ever hit Rylet, which is fantastic. So Bellion goes for the S3, probably to just get the defense buff up, but it's giving Rylet some stacks, and I do appreciate that. Archdemon gets to take the turn. We actually seal the Bellion, which is great. It means that we don't have to deal with the inability to gather souls throughout the match. And then Rylet goes. So I contemplated there a little bit on who to go for. Ended up going for Zio because I thought he's the real damage dealer here. I don't want him taking out my Archdemon, right? If Landy goes for the S3s, it doesn't really matter because as long as Rylet gets stacks, it's fine with me. Now this guy ends up saying, hey, stacks. Oh boy, let's give this guy some stacks. And he attacks with the Lilius into Rylet, which pulls Bellion. And Rylet got 2 stacks there, so now he can't risk hitting Rylet. And Rylet on his next turn will be able to proc his extra attack, so that's quite nice. Landy ends up going to DJB. DJB is getting focused down really, really hard, and I believe he goes down very soon. But Bellion can't help but go for the AoE. Rylet getting that full stacks. Archdemon actually getting a nice little counter in, which I do appreciate. Fairy Tale for a Nightmare procking too. So there we go. Look at that Rylet slicing through that Bellion like butter. Just eliminating her from the match. Landy now, she still has her blind, so she'll never hit Rylet at this rate. But the guy goes for a Soul Burn, which is pretty smart. It turn cycles her out of the blind, gives her another chance to proc Guiding Light. So you saw at the end of that turn, Guiding Light did not proc. So now she goes for the Archdemon and luckily gets that Guiding Light back. Archdemon's gonna go ahead and attack the Lilius. We get another seal, so she proc. This is the most Archdemon's ever proc for me in my life, so that is quite nice. Here I probably should have provoked the Landy, but I went to provoke the Lilius because she was going next. As you can see, Landy has another access to an S3. I didn't really care all too much because Landy was blinded. Either way it would have been fine because Rylet would never get hit. And because Landy actually got hit out of Guiding Light on the last turn, she can't go back into it this turn because it can only proc once every other turn. So we're able to slash her down with the Rylet, and that is that. With only a Seed Lilius left, my opponent concedes. So yeah, that was also a pretty fun one. I hardly ever get to use Archdemon. Unfortunately, she didn't pop her S3, but hey, can't ask for more. And last but not least, we have Zilak on the other side from the Seven Sins. Love that name. So I get first pick again, and I didn't really like that. You would see that my pre-bans actually switched up a little bit for these matches, and I decided to pre-ban the Emocaloric. I've been fighting so many Emocalorics and I keep losing to them, so I decided enough's enough. Let's go ahead and pre-ban him instead of Celilius. And my opponent didn't pre-ban Celilius, banned the Lua and the Ahmed, so I went ahead and grabbed Celilius here. And my opponent responded immediately with a Ravi and a Tywin, and I was like, oh, well, this is it. I was trying to claw my way back up to a certain threshold of points, and this was going to ruin my night. I've been climbing for about 2 hours at this point, and I pretty much just dropped points, so it's quite unfortunate. But with that, I went for DJB and Arwal. I was like, I need to tank up. This A Ravi and A Tywin are going to be really annoying. I needed the immunity from the DJB to prevent Tywin from using his S3. Even if he ignores resistance when he's enraged, it's fine. If we have immunity, he won't land any debuffs. My opponent, unfortunately, though, sees through this strategy. Look at this. We're tanking up quite a bit. He goes for the Destina and the Bellion. Very smart play on my opponent's part because the Bellion prevents me from going Spectre down here. And Destina is just a very strong revive sustain unit, and I can't really burst through her with any single solo DPS down here that I could pick. So I knew I had to ban this Destina, and I was just praying that the last pick was not going to be something too strong. So what I did was I picked the Spectre Tenebria into the Bellion. Didn't really care at this point because it shows my opponent that I could ban the Bellion, so they needed to pick another AoE. And because of that, I actually went for a Landy too, because Landy has enough damage to kind of burst through all of these first 3 knights, right? Excluding Destina. Unfortunately for me, my opponent went for LR Crow. So LR Crow is fantastic bait for Landy because of all the barriers and his immunity and all the buffs that he provides the team, so I can rip S3 after S3. Now I thought with the LR Crow and the Bellion that he was going to ban the Landy and keep the Spectre, in which case I probably would have lost, but hey, I take all that I can get. So going into this match here, we're going to see the Celilius starting off first. My Landy is actually a speed Landy, so she's around 257 speed or something like that. And yeah, Celilius is going to be going. She's taking the first turn, giving everyone vigor, and putting the S2 barrier up as well. Now, Landy just goes ahead and rips an S3. I wanted to push up my team, because I wanted DJB to go after Landy to barrier invert everyone and put the blind up. So that was quite nice. And at this point I thought, you know, I have to pop the S3 because A Tywin's going to go and he's going to rip an S3 and just stun the Landy, so I can't have that. This would at least delay the A Tywin's S3 for a bit. And with Arwal, I was like, okay, I need to stun this LR Crow. But there's no guarantee that I will because Celilius got fully resisted, I believe, by the LR Crow. So yeah, this is not really doing too much, as you can see. He's built on the slower end, so he probably has a bunch of bulk and effect res. I didn't proc Guiding Light with my Landy at the start of the match, so A Ravi got a free pot shot at her, and A Tywin now takes the turn. Now, the good thing is everyone's blinded, so as you can see, he missed, and we keep our barrier, which is quite nice. At this point, I don't know what the Bellion is, if it's counter or if it's injury, so to play it safe, I just hit the LR Crow, because he hasn't moved yet, so this isn't decreasing any of his cooldowns. So I end up just chipping away at him with the Celilius and Landy. I got lucky with that dual attack there, bringing Landy along. So as you can see, the LR Crow is very, very tanky. 27k HP. He is not on a lifesteal build, so he's probably on speed, which can explain the resistance that he has. Now the Bellion gets to go, and she's blinded, so I'm very hopeful here that she misses. It is a 20k HP Bellion, so it's not going to be hitting all like too hard. As you can see, even on a miss it just chipped away, and it's actually on an injury build. So knowing that it's on injury, I hedge my bets and say, okay, I'm just gonna hit her instead. And then I think this A Taiwan is actually on, yeah, he's actually on Aureus, which means he's just taking some damage over time. I don't have to hit him directly. End up stripping the Bellion's buffs and going for the Landy's S3, just ripping another one. I, again, don't care if the Taiwan cleanses and gets that rage buff, because everyone has immunity. Well, it's kind of wearing off at this point, but it was fine. Unfortunately, I didn't bring Landy here. I went for the A Taiwan because I really wanted to take him out before he can S3 and hit Landy out of stealth. I got lucky with getting the Guiding Light proc. So A Taiwan gets to go. He's enraged. The only one who can resist here is DJB because he has the immunity. Otherwise, everyone's getting stunned and defense broken. So there you go. But DJB's 2 turns from cleansing the team, and I'm 1 turn away from our barrier inversion, which gives me another turn. So I had to just try and chip away at the A Taiwan. I wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. All my units lose their turns, which is super unfortunate, and Landy is defense broken. So I knew that LR Crow was just going to finish her off here. Chip her down, and it would be very unfortunate. And the Bellion also, look, she has a Soul Burn as well. I have nothing because there's no Archdemon here to seal this time around. Eternus is helping DJB push up, but look, the Bellion has 1 turn on the barrier. Oh yeah, here comes the Soul Burn. But look at this, the damage. The damage is quite lacking, and she did not crit on the Landy, so I got super lucky. With my opponent's build. They probably went for a gimped build here without full crit chance. A lot of people do that with Bellion because she does give herself a crit chance buff. Those people build around 85%, but this time it cost my opponent quite a bit, because look, Landy was able to enter Guiding Light once more, the most time she's ever entered Guiding Light in her life, and right before A Ravi's turn, so A Ravi can't actually reach her. Ravi is actually going to rip the S3, 23k HP, Frenzy 3, not able to kill the Sea Lilius. Arwell's mitigation is just way too strong. So at this point, I knew we should probably have it in the bag, because I can hit the Bellion, we can get some heals, and as long as you hit Bellion, she won't counter, right? If she's on Elbrus, it'll only proc if you hit A Ravi. So we get the Vigor buff back up, and we, I believe, go for the Provoke here. I play it safe. I just let Landy attack afterwards. We provoke the Bellion and push her back, and then Landy gets the reset S3. And we rip it into our opponents, and this is going to deal a massive amount of damage. We're in Frenzy 4, almost entering a Frenzy 5. A Ravi's already used their S3. However, my opponent's Bellion is on Holy Sacrifice, which explains why they didn't leave. So yeah, there we go. We're going to go ahead and stun her. Sea Lilius is going to take the turn, chip away at that Bellion, and it's at this point that I think my opponent knew it was pretty much going to be over. DJB would have just pushed up. Oh no, I didn't push up the team. Yes, I S1'd, because if I pushed up, Landy would potentially lose Guiding Light. And after I did the S1, my opponent saw that, yeah, that Landy was pretty much going to win the match here, and I'm just very fortunate that she procced the Guiding Lights when she needed to. But yeah, that is going to do it for this video, guys. And thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe for more Epic 7 content. And until next time, take care.